You know that I believe that both of you knew she was dead at that time, and I've told you that, right?
Yeah, I know you told me that.
Okay. But you maintain that Michael left here with her at about 4:30 in the morning.
About about 5.
About 5 in the morning.
Because she said that
in
at lunch she
Michael's
got.
car with nobody else with him. And Michael didn't tell you that he was going to take her to the lake, or
No, he said they were gonna go cruise around or whatever.
they're going to go cruise around for a while.
Did he take her home?
Now, he's been kissing on her and making out with her and all in there in the house, and now he's going to go cruise around with her. He didn't tell you where he was going to cruise around to?
No, just when they say cruise around, usually around here and just drive around, you know.
Yeah.
In Brenda Salazar's case, as I already spoke of, there was evidence that she knew or thought she knew her assailant. I cannot imagine her opening that door for somebody that just knocked in the middle of the night in her PJs.
I was awake 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and considering the circumstances of Armida Garcia's case and the circumstances of Crystal Menjerez's case and the recent links, and I got to thinking, has this guy been traveling around the state? Has he been over in Dallas or Arlington? What about cases that we have right here? One particularly that I had worked, Brenda Salazar. Now, up until this point in time, I had, I guess in my mind, removed the Salazar case because there were so many differences in that case and the two younger girls and the fact that they were right there in the neighborhood. They were apparently victims of opportunity for Andy, and I couldn't imagine Brenda Salazar being in that same clique. She was, of course, further away. She'd been in an apartment. She was not a high risk victim. But then, you know, well, it's a strangulation case, that's a fact. So, and we do have some evidence in it, and we need to make sure that this is looked at and compared. And considering ligatures, they're very important. Important to the extent that they're very carefully removed from the bodies and preserved. While at the scene, I have the opportunity to see the ligature and how it's tied on the victims. I also go to the autopsy and I see that, and there were similarities between the way that the ligatures were tied. You can't walk away from a crime scene and erase it and quit thinking about it. When we go to a homicide scene and we see the horror that's been inflicted on a young lady like this, we live with it. And you know, not to be dramatic, that's a fact of life. And we know that when we go into the homicide business. But we're accustomed to it. Now, these nightmares do happen, but most of the time it's, what have I missed? What if this person was involved in some other crimes? Or how can I advance this case? How can I prepare a better case against this person for the district attorney? I'll tell you something else too. During this investigation and trying to identify the pictures and the phone numbers of the girls that we found in Andy Ortiz's bedroom, some of the porno shots and videotapes and things that we collected from there, I made it my purpose to call. And I suppose I got a lot of young girls in trouble because when I could contact their phone number and I knew I was speaking to their parent, I introduced myself. And of course they were very, very curious as to why a homicide detective was calling and asking about their daughter. And I explained to them that I found their picture or their phone number or their name in the bedroom of a person that we believed was a serial killer. And the reaction most of the time was I would hear the phone hit the floor and hear a scream, and then they would get back on with a lot of questions. And so I suppose I'm probably directly responsible for some counseling sessions from parents with their daughters during the course of all of this. But there are victims out there of others just like Andy Ortiz. He's locked up, but there's others just like him out there. And we need to strongly encourage our young girls to be very aware of this, aware of their surroundings, who they're with, and to strongly encourage these young ladies, our children, to speak with their parents and let them know who they're with, and do that in the presence of the guy they're going out with, so he knows that he's not out with this person unknown to the world. That's what Andy Ortiz relied on. In furthering the investigation, we did identify and locate and interview a very, very important witness in Armida Garcia's case. Obviously, one that may have been able to keep him in jail. In talking to the family, I tried to understand that, why they would conceal such information from the police. I can only believe, looking at it in retrospect, that it was just out of fear. What I don't understand is whether it was fear of the police or fear of Ortiz or some of his buddies out here on the street, or a combination of the two. I suspect the latter. But fear plays an important role in our investigations, and we have to be acutely aware when we're talking to people if they are being truthful with us or if they are afraid. And we have to try to work towards relieving these fears and getting them to come forth with the truth. And sometimes that's a real challenge, even with people on our side, and getting information out of them because they don't want to go to court. They're afraid of what the neighbors will think. They don't want to see their name in the paper or on TV. We understand all of that. So we try to keep a lot of this, obviously, very confidential, help them understand that and how critical they are as witnesses. Now, what made this case very unique is that this was not just witnesses out on the street. These were family members and very, very close friends of both Armida Garcia and the witness. And we would think, you would suspect that they would not only be very cooperative, that they would be beating our door down trying to tell us about this. They're watching it on the news. They're seeing this guy released because of a lack of evidence. Well, the question is whether Andy got the best of the system or not. We certainly know that he's not sitting on death row with many people that have committed probably lesser crimes. But then again, he's not out in the public stalking other young girls. Well, people frequently ask me about why the murder rate in this decade is lower, so much so than it was back in the 90s and late 80s. And the only answer I have for that is that, in fact, we are keeping predators locked up longer now, particularly for violent crimes, gun crimes and such. When they're sentenced now, then we can expect them to serve the majority of their sentences. When you arrive on the crime scene, it's sometimes hard to remove yourself emotionally from the deceased victim, but that's imperative for a detective to do. You have to look at the scene as it is, look at the evidence, the position in which the body is lying, how the body may have been brought to that area. Give clear directions to the crime scene officers as to what to do. And so there's a lot going on. It's very intense for a while, sometimes very emotional, but you have to remove yourself from that and work it as a case. I think it's only natural to look at cases you've investigated in retrospect, if you call it what ifs. That's a learning process, and that's a great advantage for investigators to be able to have years of experience to look back at cases and to know where mistakes were made, where cases may have been advanced, and to learn from that and to bring that to each and every new case that you investigate. And certainly Brenda's case was no different. If you want to ask what if this predator had still been in jail for other crimes that he had committed, would Brenda still be alive? What if we as parents and teachers and clergy and community did a better job of teaching our young ladies the importance of letting folks know where they're at, where they're going to be, and who they're going to be with? If that happens in some of these cases, we don't have homicide scenes like this.